last morning of the trip felt soft enough to trust. That is what makes certain betrayals so embarrassing. They do not happen after a week of tension. They happen after laughter, after shared photos, after the kind of small travel intimacy that makes you think you know who people are. We had spent 4 days in Lisbon with another couple we had known for years. Not best friend, emergency contact, close. But close in the practical adult way. Holiday barbecue close. Borrow sugar, feed the cat, sit on the deck until midnight close. The kind of friendship that grows around convenience at first and then starts to feel like history. My husband, Owen, adored Marcus. They could talk about old trucks, soccer injuries, and grills for entire evenings without repeating themselves. His wife, Dana, and I had our own easier rhythm. We were not identical women, which probably helped. She was louder than I was, quicker to laugh, quicker to complain, quicker to order dessert, because life was short. I liked that about her. She made ordinary dinners feel like events. By the 3rd year of living 3 houses apart, we had become the kind of neighbors who no longer knocked before stepping into one another's backyards. When this trip came together, it felt natural, not a big gamble, not one of those vacations people take to prove a friendship that does not travel well. Just 4 adults with carry-ons, good walking shoes, and enough trust to book the same flights. And to be fair, the trip itself was easy, beautiful even. Nobody fought over restaurants. Nobody vanished during museum stops. Nobody turned every quiet moment into a referendum on the relationship. We shared pastries still warm from the oven. We got lost twice and called it exploring. We took a tram uphill because Dana insisted her legs were on strike. One night, we found a tiny, tile-lined restaurant where the owner kept sending out little plates we had not ordered, and Marcus toasted to accidental luxury. I remember looking around the table and thinking this was what grown friendship was supposed to feel like. Steady, earned, relaxed. On the flight home, we had seats on the same route back to Newark. The airport was crowded in that dazed, irritated way airports always are near the end of summer. Children limp with exhaustion. Couples speak in clipped syllables. People stand too close to charging outlets as if electricity were being rationed. We got to the gate early because Owen hates the feeling of being one gate change away from chaos. Marcus went to get coffee. Dana sat cross-legged on her suitcase and scrolled through photos from the trip, already planning which one she would post and which one she would keep off social media because, in her words, some joy did not need spectators. Then, the gate agent made the first announcement. The flight was oversold. They were looking for volunteers. Compensation would be offered if certain passengers agreed to take the next day's flight, hotel included, meal voucher included, and, depending on need, a substantial travel credit. It was one of those announcements that makes everyone lift their head at once, while pretending not to care. You could feel the entire gate doing math. How much was the credit? How badly did they need to get home? Could they work remotely tomorrow? Was one extra night worth the inconvenience? A few minutes later, the agent clarified that they might need 2 seats from one booking pair, but they were still sorting it out. Marcus came back with coffee, heard the update, and immediately joked that if the airline wanted to fund our next vacation, he was willing to suffer nobly. Dana laughed and said only if there was enough money to make suffering glamorous. The conversation started as a joke. I want to be fair about that. But like many important conversations, it only started there. Then it became practical. What if one couple got tapped and the other didn't? Would it be awkward if one pair stayed behind together while the other pair flew home? What if it was just 1 voucher each? What if both seats were attached to the same reservation? I said, mostly thinking out loud, that if it ended up being our booking, I would rather the men fly home and Dana and I stay one more night than have one couple take all the inconvenience alone. We could have dinner, split the adventure, and each get a voucher. Owen shrugged and said that made sense. Marcus said absolutely, and that if it turned out to be their booking instead, we should do the same thing in reverse. Dana nodded like the matter was obvious. Of course. Why should one couple get the whole benefit and leave the other out if we were all already here together? I remember the exact feeling of that moment, not because it was dramatic, because it was ordinary. It sounded like the kind of fair plan decent people make without having to think too hard. A little inconvenient, a little funny, a little unexpectedly profitable. The sort of travel story you tell later over wine. Remember when the airline paid for our next trip because the men flew home and we stayed up too late eating hotel ice cream? That was the story I thought we were stepping into. Maybe 10 minutes passed. Maybe less. The gate agent called my name first because our reservations had been linked during check-in when we asked to sit closer together. I walked up expecting clarification, not a turning point. She told me the airline needed 2 seats from Marcus and Dana's booking, hotel and meal voucher provided, $3,000 in travel credit per seat. Would they accept? Even now, when I think about this, I remember that my first reaction was not greed. It was almost excitement on Dana's behalf. $6,000 in credit is absurd money in airport terms. It was enough to turn a delay into a prize. And because of the conversation we had literally just had, I answered with the confidence of someone standing inside shared understanding. I told the agent yes, we had already discussed it. The women would stay. The men would take the original flight home. Could she please process it that way? She said fine, printed something, and told me to confirm with the rest of my group before finalizing the seat changes. I walked back smiling. Not wildly, just the smile of someone bringing back interesting news. I said, well, it happened. The offer landed on your booking. Looks like you and I are having an accidental girls' night after all. There are moments in life when reality shifts so quickly that your body notices before your mind does. This was one of them. Dana's face changed first. Not to confusion, to resistance. Her mouth tightened in that way people do when they are already rejecting something and need a second to invent language. Marcus looked at her, then at me, then at the boarding area. And suddenly the easy fairness from 10 minutes earlier vanished, like it had never been said by anyone in the first place. Why would you tell them that? Dana asked. Her tone was not panicked. It was irritated. As if I had overstepped. As if I had presumed on something personal. Because we just talked about it, I said, still smiling a little, because I honestly thought maybe she had misunderstood which pair got selected. You said if it was your booking, we'd switch it around the same way. Marcus let out a short laugh that had no humor in it. We were kidding. I actually said no, you weren't. Not sharply, just plainly. Because truth sounds strangely gentle when you have not yet understood that it is about to be ignored. Dana stood up from her suitcase. I am not staying here without my husband. It took me a second to process the sentence because it was so carefully phrased. Not, I changed my mind. Not, I know what I agreed to, but I don't want to do it. Not even, I'm sorry. Just a clean new reality dropped into the middle of the old one. I am not staying here without my husband. As though the previous agreement had not existed. As though my role in the conversation had been a misunderstanding. As though fairness had always been optional and only I had missed that. Marcus added, if we're getting the vouchers, we'll just take the next flight together. No point splitting up. No point. There it was. The sentence that revealed everything. There had been a point when they thought the inconvenience might belong to me. Then the point was fairness. Then the point was everyone benefiting. Then the point was a funny story. But the moment the benefit became exclusively theirs, the point disappeared. I wish I could tell you I said something brilliant. I didn't. The humiliation was too quick. Humiliation is often quiet at first. It is not rage. It is not tears. It is the feeling of having been made foolish in public for assuming reciprocity where there was only appetite. I looked at Owen. He already understood. That was almost worse. The tiny flicker of recognition in your spouse's eyes when someone else has just insulted you without using insulting words. He did not speak right away because he was giving them a chance to recover. A chance they did not take. Dana crossed her arms. Marcus said, come on, don't make this a thing. That sentence nearly did me in. Do not make this a thing. The favorite phrase of people who have already decided your discomfort is the only awkward part of their behavior. I said, it became a thing when you agreed to one plan and switched the second money was attached to it. Marcus rolled his eyes and said it wasn't legally binding, which was such a strange, revealing choice of words that I almost laughed. As if friendship were only meaningful when notarized. As if integrity were an administrative problem. Dana said, you really expected me to stay behind so you could get half of our vouchers? That was the second blade. Not because she was confused, because she translated generosity into theft. She framed the agreement we had made together as me trying to take something from her. It was the fastest way possible to recast herself as the victim of my assumption. And that is when my embarrassment hardened into clarity. It was never about whether she wanted to stay the extra night. People can change their minds. People can panic at airports. People can decide they are more tired than adventurous. I could have handled any of that. What I could not handle was the speed with which she rewrote the moral record. The way she turned our shared plan into my audacity. The way Marcus stood beside her, like the entire conversation had not happened in full sentences less than 15 minutes earlier. Owen said, "If that's what you're doing, then just say that's what you're doing. Don't pretend she invented it." Marcus shrugged. "It is what it is. I have never heard a more efficient obituary for a friendship. It is what it is." Translation: I know this makes me look bad, but I am willing to pay that price. The gate agent called for final decisions. Dana and Marcus walked back to the desk together. Not ashamed. Not conflicted. Almost energized. As if opportunity had clarified them. The credits were reissued in both their names. A hotel slip printed. Meal coupons printed. New boarding paperwork arranged. Owen and I boarded our original flight without them. I do not remember sitting down. I only remember the weird, airless silence between us while everyone around us fought for overhead space and adjusted neck pillows and texted people at home. At some point, he took my hand, and I realized I had been clenching my jaw so hard it hurt. He said very quietly, "You didn't do anything wrong." And I said, "I know." But what I meant was, I know, and I hate that they made me feel like maybe I had. That is one of the cruelest side effects of small betrayals. Not that they destroy your life. That would almost be easier. It is that they force you to spend hours sorting through whether your own expectation of decency was somehow impolite. You review your tone, your wording, your assumptions. You examine yourself because that feels more manageable than accepting you gave trust to people who saw trust as usable. By the time we landed, Dana had texted me. Not to apologize. To explain. A long message about being exhausted. About wanting to be with Marcus. About how the money was a rare break for them. About how she thought we would understand. Buried near the end was a line that almost impressed me in its boldness. "I think you took a casual conversation too seriously." Casual. Another magic word. Casual when my generosity was on the table. Casual when she wanted to erase the agreement. Casual in exactly the way people describe promises they no longer want to honor. I did not respond that night. Or the next day. Marcus sent Owen a separate message that was somehow worse. He said he hated drama between couples and hoped we were mature enough not to let travel stress ruin a good friendship. Travel stress. As if the gate agent had opened a vent and out came $6,000 worth of truth. I kept thinking about the trip before the airport. The tram. The restaurant. The deck nights. All those hours that now felt lightly edited. Not fake, exactly, but reclassified. I started wondering how many times Dana had accepted favors from me, with the cheerful assumption that kindness flowed one way. How many times I had mistaken compatibility for mutuality. A week later, she came over with a bowl she had borrowed months before and acted as if normalcy were a bridge she could place between us by force. She stood on my porch and said, "I hope we're not still being weird about the airport." Being weird. Another phrase designed to make the wound look sillier than the hand that caused it. I asked her one question. "If the vouchers had been ours, would you have expected me to keep the deal we made?" She did not answer quickly enough. That pause was more honest than everything else she said afterward. Then she told me that was hypothetical and not helpful, which, of course, was its own answer. I told her I was not interested in continuing the friendship. Not angrily. Not theatrically. Just with the plainness that follows complete understanding. I said I could forgive a changed mind. I could not continue with someone who changed the story to protect the changed mind. There is a difference. And once you see it, you cannot unknow it. She looked genuinely offended. Not remorseful. Offended. As if boundaries were the one breach of etiquette she still recognized. She said losing friends over money was sad. I told her I agreed. Good thing it wasn't over money. It was over the moment she watched me carry fairness to the desk for her and decided to let me be embarrassed for it. It was over the moment Marcus called integrity a legal issue. It was over the moment both of them realized they could keep everything and still ask us to feel childish for noticing. After that, the ending was smaller than the revelation. No screaming fight. No neighborhood spectacle. We just stopped. The deck dinners ended. The casual gate into each other's yards stayed closed. Owen missed Marcus for a while. Or maybe he missed who he thought Marcus had been. Sometimes grief wears the clothes of inconvenience. You miss the people you used to text on Friday afternoons. You miss the ease of built-in company. You miss the version of your own life that still included them. But I never regretted stepping back. If anything, the distance made the truth cleaner. I kept returning to the same realization. The airport did not ruin the friendship. The airport revealed its operating system. Some relationships survive on the quiet labor of one person's willingness to be fair, before fairness is guaranteed. One person smooths the moments, one person offers first. One person assumes sharing. And because that person does it gracefully, everyone mistakes the grace for a shared culture, rather than a personal contribution. Then one day, the setting changes, the stakes sharpen, and the others show you that what they valued was never fairness itself. It was proximity to someone who made them feel generous, without requiring that they actually be so. I used to think betrayal had to be dramatic to count. An affair. A theft. A public humiliation with witnesses gasping into their drinks. Now I know some of the most useful betrayals are smaller. Small enough that people will tell you to let them go. Small enough that the offender can call you sensitive. Small enough that you have to decide for yourself whether your dignity deserves protection in scenes no one else will treat as historic. Mine did. It does. I still travel with Owen. We still sometimes get to gates too early. We still joke about volunteering when flights are oversold. But now when those announcements come on, I do not think about the money. I think about how cheap it turned out to be to learn the truth. Not $6,000. Cheaper. Just one honest conversation, one public reversal, and one long flight home, with no illusion left to carry. If I had to lose something that day, I am glad it was only the friendship I imagined I had. Not more years trying to earn loyalty from people who only practiced it in theory.
Thank you for watching. If this story pulled you in, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you the moment it drops. Remember, nothing is ever just what it seems. See you on the next one.